In today's show, we're going to talk about PowerApps time zones. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at UTC time, saving time to data sources, and why you guys have so many issues with SharePoint and Excel as data sources when it comes to date and time. And this is based off of questions I've gotten over the last few years, right? It seems like a lot of times you guys are like, all right, I get time, and then all of a sudden you incorporate a data source and it goes wonky. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the basics of time zones, what is UTC, and kind of explain that. And then we're going to look at the problems you guys have with SharePoint and Excel and just try to come full circle there. Should be fun. But first, here's our intro. Hi, my name is Shane Young with PowerApps 911. Those guys. And today's show, we're going to dive into time zones and PowerApps. And so the reason we're going to do this is because, I've done a lot of little things with dates and times here, and the YouTube comments, which I get thousands of a year, more than that. Anyway, all those comments, I get all these random comments like, hey, why is this off? Or why is that off? And so I also see that with my training classes. So what I thought I would do is kind of start with some basics here, right? We're going to talk about how PowerApps thinks about time and time zones. And then once we understand that, then we'll get into a little bit of specifics around SharePoint in those time zones and then Excel as those time zones, because those are the two that really cause the most confusion, I think. I don't know. Should be interesting. So let's just switch over to my desktop and take a look. For today, I thought we'd start with literally a blank screen. I think that gives us the most opportunity to explain this and not lose anyone with something quick that I did that didn't realize it was so important. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to throw a label on the screen, right? Hopefully you all know, but you can use the now function. And so the now function is going to show you the current date and time. But what's important to understand is that under the covers, it is using what is called UTC time, right? Universal Coordinated Time, I think is what that stands for. But so basically that is the zeros, right? And if you think about time zones, like here I am in the East Coast, we are currently minus 5 hours from UTC, right? So this morning it is 10:50 here. And so then that means it is 3:50 in not the real world, but in the UTC time. Now, what's interesting though, is that even though PowerApps uses UTC time, it is showing me in my browser my time correctly, right? I'm like, well, it's fine. What's the big deal here? So one of the things I wasn't positive of, but I checked for you guys. So how does it know what my time zone is? Well, what it's really doing is it's talking to my computer and saying, hey, what time zone is this computer in? And then it is offsetting the time from UTC into that. And if you're wondering, how do I know that it's 5 hours? If we throw a label on here, there is a function called time zone offset. And so if you give that just any date or any time, it doesn't matter, just give it a time, then you can see that there's 300, right? That's minutes, and 300 minutes, right? 300 divided by 60, 5 hours. That's how I know that my time is off by that. Now, what I wanted to figure out for you guys is I want to kind of show you this. And so what I realized was that if I go to my computer and I open up my date and time settings, right? This is where you can see that I am currently Eastern time. Let me pull this over here for you, easier to see. And so right, I'm currently Eastern time. If I say, hey, I'm actually in the Netherlands right now, right? So if we go up here, so Netherlands is in the +1 time zone, and I don't know which one of these it is. So we're just going, oh, Amsterdam, there you go. So we'll grab that one. So then that's going to change my time, right? So now my clock on my computer says it's 4:52. And, oh, it's right there. I didn't have to calculate it. There you go. So if we minimize this, now remember, now doesn't refresh right away, right? Like I'd have to leave and come back to get this load. But if we just throw a new label on the screen, and so now if I put in now, right, 4:52. So that is exactly what I expect to see, right? It is taking it's taking now in UTC and it's converting it to my current time zone based on what my computer says, because my computer does, or my browser does what my computer says. Same thing if you're on a mobile phone, right? It would take your mobile phones and do the same type of math. Okay, so that is the first hard part for people, right? Why do people see different things? So hopefully you understand why that works mechanically, right? And there's no more to it than just that. So now that we kind of have our heads hopefully a little bit wrapped around that, let's incorporate a data source, okay? And so let's start with SharePoint. Okay, I have it right here. And so what I did to help us understand what's happening here, because SharePoint throws a wrinkle in this mix that you guys, that is really hard for a lot of people to come over from. And that's the fact that SharePoint doesn't use the current user's logged in time or their computer's time zone. What SharePoint is going to use And so we go over here to settings, and then we go to site information, and then we go to view all site settings. Thanks for burying that. And so right here under regional settings is what determines what time zone this particular SharePoint site is in. And so you can see right now, I've got it in UTC time. Okay. So this is interesting, right? So I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna pretend like I didn't realize that, right? Because a lot of people don't know what time their site is in. I'll go back down here, open up playing with time. And so I'm gonna come in here to SharePoint and I'm gonna enter some time, okay? And so what I did was I created two columns. I guess I should show you that real quick. So site information, or no, list settings. And so I took the title column and just started single line of text and named it time as text. And then I created a date and time column and I set it to time as date and time. So there's only two columns we're gonna worry about. The reason for this is I want you guys to kind of understand and see the difference between text in real time. So if we click here, we'll just do a new. And so it's like, hey, enter time as text. Well, it is currently, well, my computer says it's 4:54, but my goodness, I should set my time zone back. It's 10:54 here. So 10:54 a.m. A is that letter. Oh my goodness, there we go. And so then it's like, hey, enter date and time here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to enter that same thing, right? So today is the 22nd. And then for our time, I'm going to do 10:54. And we're going to say save. Okay. So there you go. We have entered these two fields into our SharePoint list. So like, hey, great SharePoint. And so then now what I want to do, actually, we're going to add another column, right? We're going to do a bonus lesson here because it's another issue that comes up that I meant to set up ahead of time. I didn't, so I'm going to do it now. We're going to add a third column, create a column, and we're going to create this one as just date. So we'll name it just date. Notice I should not be putting spaces in my names. Slacker. I told you guys 2 weeks ago not to do that anymore. So do date and time here. And so then for the date, I'm going to do date only. Okay. So this time it's not a date and time, it's just a date. Because this is another problem you guys run into that you asked me about. So there you go. We're going to do playing with time. And so then we're just going to edit this record real quick. And we're going to set the date for today, right? The 22nd. Hit save. That looks good. All right. Now let's go pull that over into our SharePoint list. Or into our SharePoint, or into our PowerApps. Let's pull the SharePoint list into our PowerApps. It's been a long week, folks. All right, so we're going to throw a gallery here. Where are galleries? Well, it's hidden because I zoomed in. So right there, gallery. We're going to do a vertical. And so then we'll search right here for SharePoint. It will not show up because it's rude. We'll try again. SharePoint. Oh, all right, we'll go over here. All right, this is just one of those nuances there. Now it shows up. Thank you. Add my connection. We want the PowerApps video site. And then we had, I think it was called like playing with time or something like that. Playing with time. Good guess. Say connect. All right, so that pulls it into our app. And so then I'm going to click on the gallery here. I'm going to say, hey, gallery. We'll fly this out for a second. I want title and subtitle. And I want your data source to be playing with time. Perfect. Oh, actually, I want title, subtitle, and body because I just changed my demo mid-demo because that's reasonable. Okay, so now you can see that it's got some different data in here. And so right now it is like, all right, so there's time as text, so we know we did that. We did time as date and time, okay? And then we did just date. And you can see that things are off, so it's an hour ahead, right? Remember, what did I do with my time zone? I put myself in the Amsterdam time zone, so let's switch that. And let's go back to my normal US. Oh, no, before I do that, though, I want to remind you one thing. And then notice the date is 11/22 in our date only column, okay? So then now what I want to do is go back and pull that menu back up. And so we're going to change this to be the -5, which is the Eastern time zone. And we're going to minimize this. Now, nothing happened, right? But if I refresh my data source, so let's go here to icons, pull reload. Remember, I do not like you guys using the refresh, but this is a case where we want refresh, so you're allowed to use it here. So we'll do refresh playing with time, hold down the Alt key and press the button. So what all happened here? Okay, so, right, this was still in here as 10:54. This now shows 5:54, but we originally entered 10:54, right? So why is this time keep being off from what we typed over there? Because when we entered 1054, our site is currently on UTC time. And so that's what was driving it, right? So that was literally the UTC time. It got to PowerApps. It said, oh, I'm UTC -5 now because of the browser settings, right? Because we're in the Eastern time zone. So I need to back that thing up 5 hours. And so that is how that got changed. Now, right, this is, and if you want to see that proven, right, the thing you might do is go over here and say list settings. Nope, not list settings. Site settings, Shane. Site settings. Site settings. And then we'll go to regional settings. And so if we change our regional settings from UTC to -5 Eastern time, there we go. Oh, there's the OK button. Now, if we go back over here to playing with time, that shows up as 5:54. And look, your date is off by a day now. Nah! Why? Why? So the reason that this happens is because when this got set as date only, in reality, it wasn't date only. It was date plus time. And they were only showing you the date portion, but the time was secretly 12 a.m., right? Midnight. So what happened is when we set the time zone back, it all of a sudden said, well, 11:22 at 12 a.m., I need to subtract 5 hours from that, which made it 11:21 at 7 p.m. And so just date is now showing you 11:21. This one confuses a lot of people. So that's why I want you to see this break, right? Like this lost its mind. It's like, what do I do? What do I do? And so this happens a lot. And this was all because of SharePoint. This has nothing to do with PowerApps. But this SharePoint problem, often you guys are like working with PowerApps as your data source, or PowerApps is using SharePoint as a data source, and you start flipping switches and you cause this and you blame PowerApps. And so I want you to know, it is not a PowerApps thing. This is a pure SharePoint thing. Because if we go back over here, you notice that PowerApps was smart enough when it got the date back from our friend, who do you call that? When it got the date back from SharePoint, it only got the date. So it just took the 11:22. It didn't take the 12 p.m., right? Or 12 a.m., sorry, the 12 a.m. It didn't take the 12 a.m., it just took the 11:22. And so that's why we still see 11:22 here. Are you super confused? Probably. Are you going to have to watch this video like 7 times? Probably. But making these lists and pressing the buttons is going to be your guys' keys to figuring this out when I'm not there to like confuse you and walk you through it. But that's what happened. And I want you to understand that, right? And so like if we go here, let's just throw a label outside of this. And so if we do, right, our gallery name, so gallery1, dot selected, and then dot just date, right? You can see that it brought it over. So this is really confusing. It brought it over as just the 11:22, and it's showing you the 12 a.m. because it knows it needs a time, but it didn't get the time from SharePoint, so it just bolted on a time to it. Anytime that you're working with just the date in PowerApps, it is always the date plus 12 a.m., right? The 12 a.m. is secretly there. But it didn't ask SharePoint for it. It just said, SharePoint, what date did you store? SharePoint's like, oh, here it is. And then that's how the date got pushed in, okay? Super confused? Good. Sorry, I don't know what else to do other than kind of show you this and let you just have to percolate on it, okay? And it's going to be the same thing right now. So if the other pieces I want to add, I'm going to throw a button on the screen. Let's patch this data now. And so this is one of the things I do to keep my sanity sometimes. So I'm going to patch to that SharePoint list. We're going to do defaults, right? We want to make a new one. And so what you can do here is you can be like, all right, well, cool. I want to patch, what columns we want. We're going to patch, oh, I got to spell time right. Time as date and time. And so we're just going to patch that with now. And then we're going to patch time as text. And I'm also can just pass it now, actually. And so if we do this, what's going to happen? Let's press the button and see. It's going to create a new record, and they're all going to match, right? Because the SharePoint site and everything, right? Everybody's talking, even though they're passing UTC back and forth, both sides are in Eastern time zones, so there's no confusion. But if I go change this once again, right? Change your list now. No, not your list, your site, Shane. I'm going to get this right eventually. View all site settings. and then regional settings. So if we go change this, let's say my boss is like, you know what? I am in Pacific time. I want your site to be in Pacific time, right? So we're going to make that -8 hours right there. And so then we say, okay, what happens? You know what happens. The one is going to be wrong, right? So this one is now 8:03 instead of 11:03. But this one stayed 11:03. Why did this one stay 11:03? You know the answer to this, right? Because we patched the time as text. This is one of my tricks to this. If you have a hard time with time zones because you're working in a company all over the globe and you're like, man, I just wanted to save whatever time the user used when they did saving, save it as text. I do this all the time. I save date and time, or especially time, as text, so then that way I don't have to play these UTC games. If I just want to know that when Shane pressed the button, it was 11:03 and 11:22 when he did the button pressing, I don't care about UTC. I just want to know what time it was when Shane pressed the button. That tells me exactly what time. But if you do need to coordinate across time zones, it's a lot better to use this actual one, right? Because remember, at 11:03, right, it's 11:05 here in the Eastern time zone. It is literally 8:05 in the Eastern time zone. And it is, literally, what is it, I can't do math. It is now 5:05 in, Berlin. I think, if I did the math right. But, no, that'd be 6. Yeah, that's right? Because Berlin is UTC +1. So in Berlin, it is that, right? So you have to ask yourself what you want with the date and time. But the system supports it. You just have to understand that PowerApps and SharePoint, they talk to each other UTC. That UTC connection is what really matters. All right? Whew, I'm getting worked up here. Okay, so let's do the same problem, but let's talk about Excel for a minute because this one blows your minds also, right? So I'm going to go over here to Excel. We're going to create a time as text column. I don't have to call it column, time as text, and then time as date time. Okay? And so make Excel. So what I want to do here, right, one of the things you have to do when you're going to use Excel as a data source with PowerApps is you got to sometimes trick it to make sure that it does the columns the way you want them. So what I'm going to do in this first row is I'm just going to be like, text would go here. And so then in this one, I think if I remember my trick, right, I think it is Control semicolon. Oh, look at that. That's the date. And then Control, colon. So Control Shift semicolon is the time. Very cool. And so then if we do that, then I'm going to go up here to my date and times because I like to do this, right? Oh, nope, I don't want it as time though. We'll just go to custom. More number formats. And then we go to date, and then we'll scroll down here. There you go. Okay. So that gets my Excel set up the way we want, right? So then what do you got to do to use it with PowerApps? You got to turn it into a table. So I'm going to highlight these two. I'm going to say format as a table. Oh, format as a table is over here. I'm going to use this pretty orange to match my shirt. And then we're going to be at cool. And then I'm going to name my table my table. All right, I just like to give the tables names, even if they're stupid names. Okay, there you go. We're going to say save. It's like, where do you want to save it? Well, I want to save it to OneDrive, right? Okay, my business OneDrive, so that's that. So we're going to say a time game. I don't know. We'll say save. So then now that is out there. I'm going to close Excel. Now, remember, wait, actually, let's open Excel again real quick. One sec. Sorry. So the thing I want you to remember, though, because this is the confusion thing. This is the thing you guys ask about. Look, I hard-coded in Excel that I did this thing at 11:06. Excel has no concept of time zones right now, right? I just put it in 11:06 is when I did this. That's important. Close this. Bye-bye. And the reason I'm closing is PowerApps gets grouchy if I try to work with it when it's still open. So we're going to go over here. We're going to type in OneDrive, OneDrive for Business, and then we're going to go find our file, a time game. Perfect. And then we should see our one table in here, my table, and then we'll say connect. Okay, and so that's all loaded up. And so then now I'm going to go back over here. We're going to add another gallery, another vertical one. We're going to say I want to use my table, and I'm going to kind of do this whole game again, right? But we just need title and subtitle this time. And then, perfect. I guess we can just edit the fields and say you do that one as text, do this one as that. And what happened? Oh, let's get rid of this. This is our date from earlier. So what happened? So text would go here, right, as text, that's clear. But this shows 6:06 a.m. Why? Because PowerApps and Excel talk in UTC. But Excel, when we set up our Excel workbook, there was no way, like we didn't give it a time zone. Excel files don't have like a time zone on that time column. So PowerApps just assumed that that 1106 column that we pulled in was in UTC. This is another one of those things that drives you guys crazy, right? So if you wanted to fix this up, what you might do, be like, all right, all my times are in Eastern time over there. They're going to get sucked into UTC. So I got to put them back to Eastern time. So what you might end up having to do is something like date add. And so you're going to take that date. You're going to add the time zone offset that we just had. Right, and you just do now here. Oh, got to close that. And so if we close that, oh wow, that really broke that because it tried to add days. I wasn't thinking. We want to add minutes. And so then now we see what we want, right? So this sometimes is what you have to do. We'll be super honest. Remember in SharePoint a second ago, I talked about I like to use text when I'm like confused. If you're using Excel as a data source, and I think Excel is a terrible data source. I hate Excel as a data source. But if you're going to use Excel as a data source, then typically what I would recommend is just store all your date times as actual text. And then what you can do is you can use the date time value function to turn the text date and time into a time date and time, right? So like if we go over here, so let's patch, let's open Excel again. I think it'll be okay. If it breaks, it breaks. But so we're going to go to, no, all right, what we'll do, we'll patch. Just give me a button. And so I'm going to say, hey, I want you to patch my table, defaults my table. And so then we're going to do that same kind of formula, right? So time is text, we're going to patch it as now. And then time is date and time, we're going to patch that as now. And so we'll do that and that and that. And so then that should do all the fun things. Or let's just press the button, see what happens, right? So this is the Excel one. So what happened, right? The 1112, right? Patch now is now got sent over as text. So Excel and PowerApps didn't do anything with it. They just ignored it. It might as well have said Chewy is the best dog ever. It didn't matter. It just pushed that over as text. So that happened. Then, but for this other column, right, for the time is date column, PowerApps said, oh, Shane gave me 1106 or 1112 in Eastern time. I got to set that back to UTC. So it added 5 hours to it, right, which got it to be 412. And so then it pushed it in the data source. So it said, hey, here's your time in UTC. And so then now over in Excel, it's there. And so then when it comes back, it's getting the 5 hours put in, right? If we open Excel now, right, it's safe to open Excel now. Let me open this. You're going to see that second row, right? So there's the 1112 and there is the 412, right? The 5 hours in the future. It pushed it straight in because it assumed that it was UTC. And then because of my silly little formula here, right, that is adding 5 more hours to it, it got blown away. So then now we probably don't want that formula because if we're going to use PowerApps to read and write it, then we didn't need this formula. And so then now that would make it correct. But the old times that were stored in there by the system putting them in directly are wrong. Yikes. Okay. So that's super confusing. It probably is, but I'm trying to give you the tools so you can go recreate this and do it yourself to play and change, right? All the pieces are here. It's just if this is the first time you're ever hearing any of this, it's hard, I promise. Okay, the last thing I want to show you though. So remember with that, up here now we did the whole text, right? We used time as text. And so when I patched now, but I patched it as text. So it's over there as text. You can't do date calculations on text, right? I can't say, hey, let's take that top row and be like, I want you to date add and then take that and then say add 4 minutes, or it doesn't even matter, 4 hours to it, right? I can't do that. It's mad. And if you hover, it's going to tell us, you're giving me text, I expected date time. So you're like, well, Shane, then why would I ever store date and time as text if I can't use it ever again to do math or filtering or any of that stuff? Fair question. What you need to know is that there is a function called date time value. Value is spelled with an F or V. And so then now we'll say take time as text. And so then now that time has been converted to an actual date object. So then now I can say date add, and then add 4 days. I don't care. 4 days. And so then now, right, 11:22 became 11:26 down here. So that's the key. If you are going to do this whole game of storing date and time as text, then you're going to need to you're going to have to turn it back into date time once you get it over here. Okay. Hopefully I've sufficiently melted your brains. But the good news is I think all the questions you guys have asked for a long time are now covered in here, right? And the key is that you have to think about when I talk to my data source, right? What time is my data source? Well, so we're always going to, PowerApps and their data sources are always going to talk in UTC. Yay. But I have to ask myself, like, is the data source like SharePoint changing what I'm seeing? Because that can cause confusion. Or is it like Excel where we had already stored stuff and it's not in UTC, but PowerApps assumes it's in UTC, and that's the problem. Now, the other little curveball, we're not going to go down the rabbit hole, but I'll set for you guys, is that my nose super itches. No, you didn't care about my nose itching. But what I want you to know is that if you look over here under File and Settings and Advanced Settings, there is a preview feature right now called Enable Enhanced Microsoft SQL Server Connector. If this is on, which is on by default in new apps, but it wasn't on for years before, if this is on, then PowerApps and SQL do not talk in UTC. They talk in the actual time that you pass back and forth. So that can be more confusing, right? Because SharePoint and Excel, Dataverse, right? They all behave in talking back and forth in UTC. If this is turned on, then we don't talk in UTC. But if you have an app that used before this connector or before this feature existed, you had the old SQL, which is what most of us used. That one, they did talk in UTC. It's a little tough. So be careful when you flip on features because they can mess with your dates and times too. Okay, that is enough. I have went way longer than this than I wanted, but hopefully that helps you guys. If you have more questions, leave them below. I look forward to them because I know that we're going to get lots of questions here. Just remember, sometimes it takes me about a week to answer them. If we can do anything to help you here at PowerApps 911, please reach out, right? You can hit us up on the website. You can email me. You can comment below. I will get you connected. But we have all types of fun services for this. We have training classes for all this, all of those fun things. So please check it out. And with that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day. Before you go, be sure to click on the subscribe button over here so that way you'll be notified when new videos come out. If you need any help or you want to work together, whether your problem is big or small, check us out at PowerApps 911. We do it all. I rhymed. Or if you're looking for more formal training offerings, we have those linked up here somewhere. So check them out. Thanks and have a great day.